let's talk about Putin. Putin, however else you want to pronounce it, abusing power. Well, there's someone else that's abusing power, the Wagner Group. Now, I put this on the list a couple of days ago, and a lot has actually transpired since then. They're now no longer in the so the Wagner Group is a mercenary group that have now decided to go against Vladimir Putin and make a charge on them, abusing their power of the manpower that they have. Then there's this argument that maybe it's not them, maybe it's the CIA pulling strings and abusing power to try to control things. And now the Wagner Group is no longer. They did an assault on Putin, trying to take him down. Then one of the other leaders got in, Belarus, I think it was. They got involved and said, no, it's going to be bad for the country and everything. So they're now stopped. They did a deal. Now they get free passage and out. And just, oh my, Dr. Rob, this is a mess, right? There is so many people abusing power over in Russia and stuff like that. What's your take on this whole situation?
Oh, man, you couldn't write a novel like this, could you? It's crazy. But look, I've got to read his name, Yevgeny Prigozhin.
I didn't even try.
He's the head of the Wagner Group. Mm-hmm. At least formerly a friend of Vladimir Putin. We don't know what their relationship is like now. But let me tell you this. There's no way in this wide world a force of 25,000 people could ever get into Mexico, could ever get into Moscow, much less in the Kremlin. 25,000, not enough people.
No.
And they don't control the nuclear weapons. So I don't know what's behind this. It may just be a great big joke. We know, of course, that Prigozhin is now in Minsk in Belarus, and those of the mercenaries with the Wagner Group apparently have been absorbed into the Russian army. I don't know where the abuse lies, whether maybe it's abuse of the West, just confusing us. All these news organisations talking about a coup on Putin. That's a joke. There's no way in this wide world a force of 25,000 mercenaries, they wouldn't even get into Moscow. The place is too well fortified, and Putin could have pulled up at least 100,000 soldiers in next to no time. So I think there's a bit of a show going on here. Certainly power is being wielded unusually. There's no doubt about that. And I just think it's ludicrous to think that all of this was a shock and a big surprise to Putin. He's got far better intelligence operatives than that. They would have known what was going on. So, to see the Ukrainian leaders say, this is evidence that Putin is going down and he's not very well organised, all this sort of stuff. No. And look, perhaps one of the issues which has become apparent is that the Russian army itself hasn't done so well because it appears that a lot of the battles that have been won by the mercenaries.
Yes.
Yeah. So that might have some implications for the way for the leaders, the military leaders in Russia, who maybe are not as good as some people might think they are. Look, I guess when we're talking about abuse of power, the whole issue in war, and there's a war going on, we must remember this, is that the first casualty is truth. They say that the first casualty of war is truth. And the big abuse, of course, it's abuse of truth. We don't know what the truth is. We really have no idea to what extent the CIA was involved, although I understand the CIA have actually made some comments, at least recognising that they have been involved in Russia. during
Yep.
the period of the war over the last year and a bit. I suppose that's something of an admission, but I guess everybody knew that they must be there. So that's one thing. Some people are saying, well, actually, this whole thing was orchestrated because there's a lot of angst against the military leaders in Russia, and this is really a way of getting them out. I don't know whether that's true or not. So the thing is, we don't know the truth. It's the truth, really, which is being abused here. And look, as leaders, we need to take that pretty seriously.
So,
And when look in the corporate world, truth is a casualty as well. When we get involved with PR and disaster management, all these kinds of things, leaders, you need to be so careful about doing damage to the truth.
So the point that I kind of wanted to jump on with this is the coup, right? The Wagner or the Wagner group, however you pronounce it, obviously trying to do a coup.
Well, I don't know,
Putin,
honestly.
Right? Who knows?
Western media think about it, but I got my doubts. As I say, that mob, 25,000, they're not big enough. And they're not well equipped enough they couldn't possibly have succeeded in the coup. It just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. It might have just all been a show. Who knows what it was? But let's go. Like I said, none of this stuff, we know the reality of it, but we just take it as a metaphor. There was a coup attempt, right? That is a bit of an abuse of power. That's, a second in charge or someone lower, a leader below, gathering together their troops and fighting against the regime that they're meant to be fighting for. That's a bit of an abuse of power because we tend to just see the abuse of power being from the top, right? Well, it's the leader, it's the top leader that they're the only one that abuses power. But sometimes we as the followers or secondary leaders or 2ICs or whatever, we can have an abuse of power too. And I suppose what I want to get on is mutiny attempts, coups. We see them hurt churches so much. You see so many church splits and everything like that because a 2IC or the church leadership, kind of form a coup or a mutiny against the senior pastor or whatever, and abuse their power and the influence that they have and the inside knowledge that they have of certain things or whatever, and split a church and try to gather so many people against them to go against the senior pastor or the business owner or whatever it may be. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is I see that as an abuse of power. I see that as this. Obviously, you've seen this a lot, Dr. Rodney. I know.
I've seen it too often, far too often. Yeah. How do we best advise those people that are sitting under poor leadership? We talk all the time that our mission is to eradicate poor leadership. Once again, shameless plug below. Mission to eradicate poor leadership. Leadership development program below is how we believe we're fighting against and eradicating poor leadership. Yes, there's poor leadership. But is a coup the right way to go about fixing it? Well, Craig, you and I have often talked about your dream of ridding the world of poor leadership. It doesn't mean ridding the world of poor leaders. It means changing poor leaders, make them good leaders. So the issue is leadership, not necessarily the leaders. Mm-hmm. Look, often when a church split happens, it's not necessarily because the senior pastor is a poor leader. Mm-hmm. It's more often the fact that someone a little bit lower down in the ranks covets leadership.
Oh,
that definitely is an abuse of power. See, we should never covet another person's gifting or another person's assignment. Yes. That comes from God. I think it's a terrible sin when people do covet another person's gifts or another person's ministry or the assignment that some other. We're not, the 10 Commandments. Don't covet. Mm-hmm. Don't covet your neighbour's ox. Don't covet your neighbour's wife. Don't covet anything of your neighbour's. Your senior
Yes.
pastor is your neighbour. Don't covet what your senior pastor has. I've seen church split, a lot of church splits. I haven't seen one yet that was genuinely a split caused because the senior pastor was a really bad leader. It always happened because someone else decided they wanted to be a leader. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes this might be justified, but then the right way to go about it, I think, is through if the congregation, like if that church is part of a larger denominational movement, then there are usually processes that can be initiated, and I really think that's the way you should go. And I know in my own denomination, my own movement here, the Australian Christian churches, there are methods, there are processes, and I would always urge people to go through the processes at least first. You can do a lot of damage. You do a lot of damage to people when there's a church split. You see, it's not just the leaders who are hurt. A lot of people get hurt. You know, we see similar things in businesses. It happens in the boardroom. I've had that experience myself. That's a really difficult experience to go through. It's quite difficult, actually, because directors have got to keep a lot of things confidential, particularly where individuals are concerned, say where the CEO is concerned, and sometimes a boardroom coup happens because there's a group of people who think you haven't done something right, you're not in a position where you can defend yourself because there's confidentiality to consider.
Yeah.
You know, again, don't covet what other people have. That's important. But see, on the other hand, when you're introducing this topic, one of the things that went through my mind was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who, of course, was part of a plot to assassinate Hitler, right?
Okay.
Now that was a good thing. Him and his co-plotters, they didn't succeed, of course, and they were executed. Not too many people would say that was a bad thing. Yes. So there can be, and I think they are rare, there can be occasions when it is the right thing to do. Yeah. But certainly in the church world and in the business world, I have not personally been aware of any occasion when it was actually the right thing to do. So I'm not denying that it is the right thing, but I think it's very, very rare.
Yeah, I think that, look, a lot of the coups or mutiny or church splits that I've experienced, they use the justification of poor leadership and their experience. But you're absolutely right. Yes, there was poor leadership. Remembering we're talking about the behavior, not the person. But the reason why they split is because they coveted that leadership position. They wanted the leadership position, so they,
Often that's the case. It's the personal ambition of the person who they build a bit of a coalition behind them, and then whammo, off they go. It happens often. But this kind of thing, it happens in businesses as well.
Yes.
It happens in businesses as well, where a senior person, not the CEO, not necessarily the owner, they go off, start up in competition and take a number of key staff with them. That happens a lot in business as well. So it's not just in the church world that this happens. A lot of people in business have had similar experiences.
Yeah. So Putin, the Wagner group, forming a coup against Putin. Leaders, we need to learn. A coup is an abuse of power. We can be. Now, sometimes it's called for, but not always and very rarely. How do we know? Is it right? Well, are you forming a coup because you're coveting a position, someone else's position, someone else's benefit, someone else's gain? Are you coveting that? I'd warn you to look inwards. Even if there is poor leadership at play, why are you doing it, and what is the best way to approach this? Because a coup, that's an abuse of leadership. That's an abuse of power. You're responsible for all those people that you're misleading. We spoke about church splits, and I really feel like if you cause a church split, I've seen it too many times that most times in a church split, most of those people that end up splitting are no longer in a relationship with Christ. They're no longer a part of a church at all. And there tends to be this kind of rebellious spirit that comes from it. And I believe that you, as a leader that has instigated that coup, the mutiny or the church split, you're going to have to answer to God. Because as leaders, we are given responsibilities to look after the people we're leading. Just like all the other resources we're given, God calls us to steward them. We are going to be called into account for how we have stewarded the resources and the people we've been called to lead. So be careful. Don't form a coup because you are coveting something that someone else has. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel. And hey, consider subscribing while you're there.